All right. So this week I'm going to cover the topic of sleep. And hopefully by the time I'm done, you'll agree with me that there really is no substitute for it. Sanjay Gupta is an American neurosurgeon, medical reporter, and writer. He serves as Associate Chief of the Neurosurgery Service at Grady Memorial Hospital in Atlanta, Georgia. And he's the Associate Professor of Neurosurgery at the Emory University School of Medicine. He's the author of a book, Keep Sharp, Build a Better Brain at Any Age. And I'm going to start this lesson by quoting his introduction to the chapter he gave to sleep in his book. He says, "How well did you sleep last night? Do you remember dreaming? Do you sleep solidly without waking? Do you rely on an alarm to wake you up? If you can't call yourself a good sleeper, you're not alone. Fully 2/3 of us who live in a modern developed world are chronically sleep deprived. That's tens of millions of us. The subject of sleep has produced lots of bad information. People who tell you they can get by on 4 hours of sleep do not know what they're talking about. And if they do get only that much sleep, they are living with a much higher risk for all sorts of health challenges. Chronic inadequate sleep puts people at higher risk of dementia, depression, and mood disorders, learning and memory problems, heart disease, high blood pressure, weight gain and obesity, diabetes, fall-related injuries, and cancer. Lack of sleep is not a badge of honor or a sign of integrity. There is no data that shows successful people get less sleep, despite the trend among celebrities and entrepreneurs to extol the virtues of their super early mornings." And with that, let's begin the lesson on sleep. Did you know there are 4 stages and 2 basic types of sleep? Stages 1, 2, and 3 are what's called non-REM, which stands for non-rapid eye movement. Stage 4 is the REM, or rapid eye movement sleep, which you've probably heard about before. It's when most of our dreaming occurs. But each stage has a critical function with specific brain waves and neuronal activity. You cycle through all 4 stages of non-REM and REM sleep several times during a typical night, with increasingly longer, deeper REM periods occurring toward morning. We know sleep is important, but how important? Could anything bad happen with even 1 hour of sleep loss? Well, daylight savings time is when we spring ahead and potentially lose an hour of sleep. Does anything bad happen when we do that? I mean, it happens in 70 countries and impacts 1.6 billion people. Well, some research has found a 24% increase in heart attacks on the Monday following the daylight savings time adjustment. Other research has found increased auto accidents, workplace-specific accidents, ischemic strokes, depression, and suicide. So yeah, even 1 hour less sleep can result in dramatic negative outcomes. Next, I want to talk a few minutes about sleep apnea, namely obstructive sleep apnea. Let's watch this video first. It's only about a minute. Here we go.
Sleep apnea is a serious sleep disorder in which breathing repeatedly stops and starts. The most common form is obstructive sleep apnea. OSA occurs when the soft tissue in the back of the throat relaxes, causing your airway to narrow. When your airway repeatedly becomes blocked, it limits the amount of air that reaches your lungs. Your brain senses this inability to breathe and briefly awakens you from sleep so that you can reopen your airway. This awakening is usually so brief that you don't remember it. You may make a snorting, gasping, or choking sound. This may happen a few times a night, or in more severe cases, several hundred times a night. People with OSA may not be aware that their sleep was ever interrupted. If you think you may have this form of sleep apnea, contact a physician. Sleep apnea is treated with lifestyle changes, mouthpieces, CPAP, continuous positive airway pressure breathing devices, and in extreme situations, surgery may be required.
All right. So, sleep apnea affects about 20% of U.S. adults. It's more prevalent in people over the age of 50, and in men, affecting 24% of men compared to 9% of women. As the video said, sleep apnea happens when there's a collapse of the airway during sleep. Muscles in the back of the throat fail to keep the airway open. It's caused by excess weight, large tonsils, or just the structure of one's throat. Dreamless sleep and loud snoring are telltale signs of the condition. For 10 seconds to a minute or more, a person with sleep apnea stops breathing, which lowers blood oxygen levels and strains the heart. These micro-awakenings can go on hundreds of times a night, fragmenting sleep and preventing a person from experiencing all cycles of sleep that include the most restorative one, deep sleep. The condition can increase the risk of developing heart disease, diabetes, stroke, and cancer. It also increases the risk of car accidents and lowers quality of life in general, largely due to daytime exhaustion and lack of energy. Sleep apnea can be treated, usually with the help of a continuous positive airway pressure (CPAP) device worn during sleep. People with sleep apnea who are overweight and lose weight often find relief and may no longer need a CPAP device. You know, we all have times when we don't get enough sleep, but it's important those times are the exception, not the rule. Why? Because sleep impacts every single psychological and physiological function in the body. Hunger and satiety are affected. Most animals don't sleep deprive themselves unless they are starving. With too little sleep hormones like ghrelin and leptin, we are going to see the wrong kind of swings in our hunger. So we're going to see increased hunger, reduced satiety when the hormones like ghrelin and leptin are screwed up due to sleep disturbances. We are going to be more insulin resistant. Insulin is not as effective at doing its job, therefore we need more of it, which blunts and can blunt fat loss. We have higher average blood glucose levels. Higher average blood glucose typically requires more insulin. More insulin can blunt fat loss, among other things. And just high blood glucose in general is not good for inflammation and health as a whole. Empathy. Our empathy goes down. Cancer risk and progression are impacted in a negative way with too little sleep, or in a positive way with the right amount of sleep. Diabetes is impacted. Decreased sleep over decades parallels diabetes increases. In one study published in The Lancet, subjects were restricted to 4 hours of sleep. They were allowed to sleep from 1 to 5 a.m. for 4 nights. The researchers found glucose clearance rate was down 40%, acute insulin response was down 30%, and the big message was, with just 4 days in a row of sleep deprivation, the subject looked like they had type 2 diabetes. It impacts obesity. 28.3% of adults report sleeping 6 hours or less per night. Studies have indicated that the prevalence of those sleeping less than 7 hours a night has significantly increased in recent decades. Sleeping 6 or less hours a night is a risk factor for higher body mass index, BMI, and a predictor of greater weight gain. Research from the U.S. National Institute of Mental Health found that lack of sleep increases the risk of obesity. Getting even 1 extra hour of shut-eye may help you lose weight. Scientists followed 500 people for 13 years. People sleep less and gain weight as they age. Those who put on the most weight also lose the most sleep. Here are 3 quick reasons people who get too little sleep are more easily fattened than those who get adequate, but not too much, sleep. People who don't get enough sleep have more time to eat. So you finished your 3rd or 4th meal of the day at 7 p.m. Nice. You meant to go to bed at 10 p.m., but it's midnight and you're still answering emails and checking out the latest Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok blatherings. Now you're hungry again, and here comes the off-plan next meal. Not nice. The longer we're awake, the more calories we consume. The more calories we consume, the slower our weight loss or the faster our weight gain, depending on the magnitude of the additional calories consumed from being awake. Other recent research has highlighted the critical contribution of meal timing to weight regulation. So even what they found is, even when total calories for a 24-hour period are the same between 2 individuals, those who consume more of their calories during periods they would ordinarily be sleeping, they gained more weight. The second thing that really are the 1, 2, 3 things where sleep can easily impact weight. Second thing is chemicals released during sleep, such as ghrelin and leptin, as I mentioned before, control the body's fat stores. Hunger in the body, therefore the body's fat stores. Lack of sleep increases ghrelin and decreases leptin levels, which increases appetite and slows metabolic rate. Humans compensate for sleep loss by increasing energy intake. Sleep restriction increases the drive for higher fat and or higher carb foods and drinks, and this commonly results in greater consumption of junk food and snacks. The third thing that's kind of the quick, how does sleep impact weight? Sleep-deprived men and women have poor judgment, inhibition, and coping skills. Let's face it, no one functions optimally on too little sleep. We are all prone to act like babies when sleep is inadequate. We are all most likely to make poor choices when we are hungry, angry, lonely, tired, right? Being sleep deprived also increases our sensitivity to food images. Think junk food marketing, with our reward and anticipation centers of the brain exhibiting greater activation. So, what else negatively impacts our judgment, inhibition, and coping skills? Alcohol. And guess what? Several studies show similarities between fatigue-related cognitive and physiological impairment and alcohol intoxication. The CDC says being awake for 17 hours is similar to having a blood alcohol concentration of 0.05%. Being awake for 24 hours is similar to having a blood alcohol concentration of 0.10%. In many states, the blood alcohol concentration considered legally intoxicated with respect to a charge of driving under the influence is 0.08%. However, it's widely accepted that a blood alcohol concentration of 0.05% produces driving impairments. According to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, every year about 100,000 police-reported crashes involve drowsy driving. These crashes result in more than 1,550 fatalities and 71,000 injuries. All right, continuing on, sleep impacts life expectancy, longevity. It impacts the immune system. You know, natural killer cells are like secret service agents of the immune system. They're good at identifying dangerous, unwanted elements and eliminating them. These natural killer cells are lower when we're not sleeping enough. With only 4 hours of sleep, we can see a 70% drop in natural killer cell activity. Okay? It impacts depression, cardiovascular problems, heart disease, repair and maintenance of brain cells. We need sleep to remove toxins and debris in the brain. You know, metabolites that accumulate in the brain, like beta amyloid, are known to increase the risk of Alzheimer's if not kept in check. Clearance of beta amyloid happens twice as fast when you're asleep compared to awake. Sleep impacts blood pressure. Did you know that sleep apnea is a leading cause of high blood pressure? Impacts stroke or heart attack risk. One study found those who consistently sleep fewer than 6 hours a night have double the risk of stroke or heart attack. It impacts inflammation. It impacts the vaccination response, how well we respond to vaccines, which is kind of an important subject in our modern era. It impacts burnout, the feeling of burnout, infection risk, distractibility. How much can you focus? How easily are you distracted? Hormone regulation, emotional instability, learning and memory. So as far as learning and memory, it's not just whether you remember something or not, but the details of how you remember it. When we're sleep deprived, we are more likely to remember negative words than positive. We're already hardwired with negative bias to remember the negative. Too little sleep can make that even worse. So, good sleep after learning something improves the retention of what you learned. It's like hitting the save button of what you were taught. So, I guess if you fall asleep during my presentations, I shouldn't take offense to it. It just means you're trying to make sure you remember everything you heard prior to falling asleep. So good sleep also helps with something called memory consolidation. Deep sleep brain waves act like a file transfer mechanism at night, shifting memories from a short-term vulnerable reservoir to a more permanent long-term storage site within the brain, and therefore protecting them, making them safe. It's probably not a coincidence as well that as sleep can worsen with age, memory also worsens with age. And accidents. As I stated a bit earlier, drowsy driving results in tens of thousands of accidents and deaths every year. In addition, there is overwhelming evidence demonstrating that overly sleepy employees are 70% more likely to incur a workplace accident. In one Swedish study of over 50,000 workers, those who self-reported disturbed sleep were twice as likely to die in an accident related to the workplace. So listen, you can be doing everything right except getting enough sleep, and you are more likely to fail at anything you are striving to accomplish. Sleep is that important. And nothing can take the place of quality sleep, so don't kid yourself. Taking stimulants won't, eating healthfully won't, exercising won't. Nothing will make up for a chronic lack of sleep. Too little sleep is not a badge of honor. It's a health and lifestyle risk. If you do get less than 7 hours of sleep most nights of the week and it's a chronic issue, then realize that part of the reason you are unhealthy and or has struggled to achieve lasting weight control is because of these sleep patterns that you have. So how much sleep do you need? How much is enough? Well, it's individual. Some need 7-ish, some may need 9-ish. And it's very genetic too. You need the right amount of sleep for you. The old standard of or thinking that everyone needs 8 hours of sleep, that was allegedly born out of a study from the 1940s out of Stanford, but it does vary a bit. However, just about everything I've been reading recently does not say that anything less than 7 is okay. 7 appears to be the basement now for how much is enough, not 6, but 7 or more, and usually it's between 7 and 8 hours, and again, it can vary, but usually 7 is the basement now. All right, until the advent of artificial lighting, we humans only had fire or the sun for light, and we spent our evenings in relative darkness. For hundreds of thousands of years, our light-darkness circadian rhythm was governed mostly by just that, the light of the sun, and then the darkness resulting from the setting of the sun. It's not exactly known when we humans were likely to first experience the ability to pull an all-nighter with some form of light, but well before Thomas Edison and others created the light bulb, as early as 4500 BC, there were oil lamps that allowed for artificial light. Now in much of the world, evenings are illuminated. We take our easy access to this convenient but artificial light pretty much for granted. Exposure to light suppresses the secretion of melatonin, often referred to as the sleep hormone. It's the central part of the body's sleep-wake cycle. Its production increases with evening darkness, promoting healthy sleep and helping to orient our circadian rhythm. As we get closer and closer to when we want to fall asleep, we do not want to interrupt or disrupt the release of melatonin. And I want to mention again too that getting sunlight during the day, especially within the first hour of waking, can really help melatonin amounts and the timing of melatonin so we can fall asleep earlier and better in the evening. Even dim light can interfere with a person's circadian rhythm and melatonin secretion. A mere 8 lux, a level of brightness exceeded by most table lamps, and about twice that of a night light, has an effect. Light at night is part of the reason so many people don't get enough sleep. Because I'm talking about sleep, I want to talk just a few minutes about blue light. What is blue light? Blue light is everywhere. Sunlight is the main source of blue light, and being outdoors during daylight is where most of us get most of our exposure to it. But there are also many man-made indoor sources of blue light, including fluorescent LED lighting, flat-screen televisions, and of course pretty much all of our computers, phones, and tablets. Not all colors of light have the same effect. Blue wavelengths, which are beneficial during daylight hours because they boost attention, reaction times, and mood, seem to be the most disruptive at night. Although it is environmentally friendly, blue light can affect your sleep and potentially cause disease. It tricks your brain into thinking it's daytime even when it's not, potentially keeping you awake if you use your device before bedtime. Okay, so whether it's the lights in our home, the TV, a computer, a mobile phone, or tablet, the likelihood that we're getting artificial light, including sleep-disrupting blue light, too close to bedtime is quite high. So what's good light hygiene with respect to helping us sleep? Relative darkness for sleep is how we lived and evolved for hundreds of thousands of years. So, expose yourself to lots of bright light during the day, ideally sunlight within an hour of waking for at least 15 minutes, which will boost your ability to fall asleep earlier as well as positively impact sleep quality. This can also improve your mood and alertness during daylight hours. Use dim red lights or night lights. Red light is less likely to shift circadian rhythm and suppress melatonin. Get your lighting dimmer and dimmer the closer it gets to bedtime. Make your bedroom as dark as possible. If you're a night shift worker and you sleep during the day, use blackout blinds, curtains, or both. Find the night shift or night setting on your phone and/or use an app that blocks blue light the closer it gets to bedtime, and especially if you are using your phone while in bed. Ideally, make your bedroom about 2 things and only 2 things: sleep and sex. Last, you might find some out there hawking blue light filtering glasses. I'm only going to mention it so you are at least aware these things are out there and the marketing is often really over the top. I'm just going to say that the American Academy of Ophthalmology says you don't need to spend extra money on blue light glasses to improve sleep. Simply decreasing evening screen time and setting devices to night mode is what you should do. That's what the group says. Good sleep hygiene. The objective is to sleep efficiently. The time you spend in bed should be very close to the time you are actually sleeping. But that can be kind of hard if you're an overthinker. Can anyone relate to this?
Like a lot of people, I used to find myself getting bored all the time, but that was before I discovered Overthinking. With overthinking, you can now turn your free time into hours of crippling anxiety. Overthinking allows you to take even the most insignificant anecdote, analyze and break it down for hours, successfully pushing back your sleep up to several months. Think about how much time you've wasted sleeping. And if you like overthinking, you'll love second guessing. Why come to terms with a decision you've made when you can use it as yet another excuse to hate yourself?
Right? Can anybody relate to that? So I'm a bit of an overthinker, so I can relate. It's definitely something I need to continue working on. Next up, are you a lark, as in an early bird who gets the worm, or are you more of a night owl, often staying up past 11 p.m.? Whatever you are, when possible, try and match your bedtime with what you most naturally are. There's a website owned by Dr. Michael Breus, a respected sleep researcher, called the Power of When quiz that you can go to find out more about your sleep chronotype, as it's called, whether you're an early bird or a night owl. Studies show also that caffeine can take as much as 10 hours to be out of your system. Stop caffeine intake as early in the day as possible, before noon if at all possible. If this doesn't work, cut out stimulants completely. As you get older, your sensitivity typically increases. Sleep medication interferes with the 4 stages of sleep that are critical to optimal psychological and physiological function. Dependence on sleep medication leads to several hazards and complex problems that are beyond my talk here. But my message is just to talk to your primary care doc if you are having to live on them to sleep. Minimize exercise, smoking, alcohol, and heavy meals within 2 hours before sleep. Control the stimuli in your sleep environment by eliminating non-sleep activities, except sex, including TV and reading. Make an agreement with your partner that neither of you will discuss any important issues within the hour before retiring to sleep. Increase calming stimuli by turning down bright lights as you get closer to sleep time. Don't check your email one more time before bed. You are guaranteed to see an email that is distressing and that causes your mind to race. A nap during the day can be good for some, but it can also disrupt nighttime sleeping for some. If your nighttime sleep is not going well, don't nap during the day. Turn down the thermostat to 62 to 68 degrees. Tossing and turning in bed, get up. Do something else. Don't make the association of not sleeping while in the bed the norm. Relearn the association that you once had, which is your bed is the place of sleep. So the analogy would be, you'd never sit at the dinner table waiting to get hungry. So why would you lie in bed waiting to get sleepy? Go to bed at the same time every night if possible. Consistency is king. Create sleep rituals that trigger the natural shift into sleep. In conclusion, sleep problems lasting more than a week should be discussed with your doctor. It affects everything you do in a day, your mood, your energy, your relationships, and most definitely your metabolism and weight loss. There's a maxim you've probably heard that goes, "I'll sleep when I'm dead." But that is mortally unwise advice. The simple truth is, the shorter you sleep, the shorter your life. Short sleep predicts all-cause mortality. Matt Walker did a TED Talk presentation titled "Sleep is Your Superpower." He did a nice job with it. Right now it's got over 8.9 million views as of today. I wanted to give him credit for what I say next because I thought he did a nice job with his phrasing here. He says, there is no aspect of your wellness that can retreat at the sign of sleep deprivation and get away unscathed. Sleep loss will leak into every nook and cranny of your physiology. The decimation of sleep throughout industrialized nations is having a catastrophic impact on our health, our wellness, even the safety and the education of our children. Sleep insufficiency is fast becoming one of the greatest public health challenges that we face in the 21st century. But sleep is not an optional lifestyle luxury. Sleep is a non-negotiable biological necessity. It is your life support system and Mother Nature's best effort yet at immortality. For optimal fat loss, muscle preservation, and health, it's time for us to reclaim our right to a full night of sleep and without embarrassment or that unfortunate stigma of laziness. Before I wrap up this lesson, I want to share with you a video clip from one of my favorite doc educators, Dr. Peter Attia, MD. Listen carefully to how he answers Tom Bilyeu's question about what could have the biggest impact on our health.
My final question, what is one thing that people could change that would have the biggest impact on their health?
You're going to hate my answer, man. It's going to depend on where they are on each of these 4 metrics to begin with, meaning where they are on exercise, sleep, nutrition, and management of distress. So in other words, the biggest impact will be the one in which you are most lacking for each of those. So for example, somebody whose sleep is completely abysmal, if they could address their sleep, that will probably have the biggest impact. For somebody whose nutrition is atrocious, addressing that will have the biggest impact. If you ask that question in reverse, it's a little easier. A catastrophic interruption to which of those four things will have the greatest detriment on you? It's probably sleep.
Whoa.
Right? So again, not really appreciated, but if you take an extreme posture, how long can you go without eating? 2 months. How long can you go with not sleeping without becoming completely psychotic? I don't know, days. Yeah. Right? Maybe 6, 7 days. I don't know the answer, but you're going to more quickly completely lose it if you don't sleep than if you're blowing any of those other things. So if someone's sleep is a real mess, it's remarkable what you can fix and how much of bad sleep permeates into other things.
All right. Over and over, you'll find expert after expert discussing how important sleep is for all the reasons I've given you in this lesson and more. And finally, I'm going to let Harvard psychiatry professor Robert Stickgold sum up this lesson for me. I like how the professor finished his presentation.
So you do need to sleep, or rather, you need to sleep. You need to sleep to maintain alertness and optimal cognitive functioning, to optimize your immune defenses, to maintain hormonal regulation and weight, to prevent beta amyloid buildup and Alzheimer's, to permit sleep-dependent learning and memory consolidation, and as Chuck pointed out, just to be happy. Or, to put it another way, if you don't get enough sleep, you'll end up stupid, fat, sick, and unhappy. The choice is yours. Thank you.
All right. So one thing I want to say too is I want to at least speak for just a second to the night shift workers. I realize that what I'm about to say, what I'm about to say, for night shift workers, it's just never going to be perfect. It's just not. So all we can do is all we can do. As a night shift worker, all you can do is all you can do. Try to sleep when you can. Try to get as close to 7 or 8 hours of sleep when you can. It's going to be screwed up. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to fit the models. And all you can do is all you can do. Try to apply all of the other strategies that I gave with regard to room darkness, quiet, as best you can, stimulation, so on and so on, so that the sleep you get is the best sleep you can get. But basically every single source, I said, and again, I get it, with regard to the night shift workers, this isn't going to work for you, but they said do your best to keep a schedule, to be very consistent. And they all said for sleep, consistency is king. I think if I would say one thing in all the research I saw, one thing from all the experts that I saw was consistency is king. So try to be as consistent as you can.